Hi, so I just want to make a quick video about using vapor deposition, or sometimes called sputtering, to deposit down things like gold electrodes. So when I mean sort of sputter down gold electrodes, I'll just click to one of our standard products, and we have these kind of vapor deposited gold electrodes. These ones happen to be on a glass substrate. So I'm going to come back now and talk about the main theme of this video. And the main theme of this video is how to get the cost down when talking about vapor deposited gold electrodes. Now, obviously, as Zimmer and Peacock, we're particularly interested in biosensing, so maybe we've got a bias towards that. One of the things that's one of the ways of getting the costs down is actually getting the size down. So typically, for example, Zimmer and Peacock will have electrodes that are 7 millimeters wide and 25 millimeters long. Now, the issue with that is when we're making vapor deposited electrodes, we have what's called a wafer, have diameters of something like 100 millimeters on it. So it doesn't really give you an awful lot of space. So the reason I kind of bring that up and say that it's useful to kind of know that is because if we make a large-ish electrode system like that, so it has a width and a length, and it's 7 millimeters by 25 millimeters, it means that we end up only making something like 23 electrodes wafer, so per manufacturing area. Now, when you first make one wafer, you might only have a 50% yield, so that ends up sort of yielding something like 12, potentially with rounding and stuff. That may end up only providing 12, let's say, sensors. So if we produce 2 wafers, we end up getting 24, and it's expensive because actually it can take well over a week of effort to just make that one wafer. So sputtering electrodes, you end up with very pristine gold. Got to be a little bit careful because it can actually end up being quite fragile gold because it's quite thin. So whenever people are doing sputtered electrodes, you've got to be able to think about the voltage and the current. If the voltage is high and the current is high, then V times I equals high power, and high power can end up damaging these kind of electrodes. But let's now talk about how to optimize the pricing on the manufacturer. So we've done this calculator to try and kind of help you optimize and think through this. Now, if you make these things small, why are semiconductor chips small? Because then they can basically just pack in a whole array of a lot of these on the one what's called wafer. So if we pack them in small and we have something like a 80% yield, so we do a visual inspection and 80% of them are good, that means we end up delivering something like 128 good electrode systems, and we only do 2 wafers, so we end up with 256. Not the problem, but it should be worth noting that actually, they end up being like 72 euros, which is pretty much approximate to $72 each. Now, we have tried to indicate that, in order to get lower pricing, you have to kind of come up in terms of the number of wafers run. But that only brought it to 42 euros. So we can make low-cost sputtered electrodes, but it really only works if you can make them small. And the problem about making things small is now you're dealing with handleability. How am I going to actually pick this up? This is almost like dust, 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. But of course, when you do that, you end up producing a piece that's 7 euros each. So making them small and doing them in high volume does then bring the price right down. But as I say, a lot of the time, especially with Zimmer and Peacock, people are particularly interested in kind of the analog version or of our screen printed electrode. So our screen printed electrode might have a dimension of like 7 millimeters by 25 millimeters. People want the sputtered version, but when you do look at the economics of this, they can be quite expensive. So unfortunately, our recommendation is use screen printed gold rather than sputtered gold. If you do want to do sputtered gold, and I think Zimmer and Peacock is a good partner because we do understand beyond the gold, it has to become a biosensor. So we do have that sort of that site where this is actually going, but it can be quite an expensive process. So of course, any questions? This Zimmer and Peacock. Okay, thanks very much.